What's up, YouTube? So I recently read a study where they looked at the amount of stress that people experienced in their life, and they found that teenagers reported experiencing a significantly greater degree of severe stress than did adults. And a lot of adults questioned this study because they said, how could teenagers experience more stress than us? Because they don't have any financial responsibilities and they have their whole life in front of them. But to me, this study made a lot of sense because yes, although teenagers might experience less financial responsibility than do adults, one of the major factors of stress for human beings is the degree of control that they feel over their lives. And if you look at teenagers versus the rest of their lives as adults, being a teenager is the time in your life when you will experience the least amount of control over your life. Let's look at the 5 biggest decisions of your life and how as a teenager you have almost no control over any of them. Number 1, you have very little control over who you hang out with because those things are largely determined by where you live and what school you go to. And you might have parents who try to outlaw you from hanging out with certain groups of people. For example, maybe you want to date a Capulet, but your parents are super Montague and they're all like, I'm not going to let you date that person except I'm going to talk in iambic pentameter and you're not going to understand any of the things I'm saying to you. Number 2, you can't control who you live with because this is generally based on who your parents marry and how many babies they have. I mean, unless your parents are coming to you like, hey, do you think we should have more babies? In which case you're probably like, whoa, way too much information. I do not want to be involved in this discussion at all. Number 3, what you do with your time. As a teenager, you are required by law to be in school for certain hours per day, and then your teachers give you homework that you have no control over how much there is, and then your favorite YouTube creators create content and you must watch it, and if you're into daily vloggers, then you get behind after a couple days of doing homework, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I've got hours of YouTube to catch up on. Number 4, where you go. And the little free time that you do have, you have limited options as to where you go during that time because of the big 3 C's. Number 1, the curfew that your parents or city establishes for you. Number 2, the city that you live in doesn't have public transportation options for you as a teenager for getting around. And number 3, related to that, is the car that you may or may not have access to, or whether you are even old enough to have a driver's license. Number 5, where you live. This can be really tough, especially if you live in a small town where there's just not a lot of stuff to do. Or maybe you want to find a boyfriend or girlfriend, but there's only like 10 potential people you could date at your school and they're already dating someone. And so you have to decide between being single or dating your cousin. So those are some of the reasons that I think that being a teenager is in fact very stressful. It's extremely simple to solve all of these problems. All you have to do is wait a couple of years and there is a 100% chance that you will no longer be a teenager. Please subscribe for a new video from me every Tuesday.